David King, hello.
Welcome back, G. Good to see you back in the premises. We've had to manufacture it for the last couple of weeks just to pretend that you're actually here. But Ollie doesn't.
Good morning.
Yeah, I didn't think he was brave enough to play that for a second.
I know you've been taking
liberties.
liberties.
I had to eyeball him just then to play that. You got him all scared around here, I tell you. It's amazing.
You're about the only one I can't get around, to be honest.
I'll tell you, it's been different without you. Good to have you back, but gee, there's so much to talk about, isn't there?
Oh, I've been listening with great intent to the means test, which really is the best encapsulation when you're trying to follow from afar. So give me a King's Gambit, because you can go in any direction with one round to play.
Well, everyone's either going to their own business or going to a business today, and footy's no different. And there's, I think when you look at the ladder, you can ask the same as your day-to-day issues. Why are we where we are? What's the reason we are where we are? So if you look at 18th on the ladder, Richmond, why are they there? Well, they've had a shocking injury run. They're down on talent. They're coming off the back of a seriously amazing patch of 6 or 7 years. So we understand why they're there. And as you track up the ladder, you pick your own reasons as to why you think your club's where they are. Is it the talent? Is it the performance of that talent? Is it the leaders? Is it injuries? Are there mitigating circumstances, or is it coaching? Is it the motivation of the coaches? Is it the tactics? Game day? Is it the strategy that's been embedded for 6 to 8 months through a pre-season? Has the build gone awry? Why are you where you are? Because I look at St Kilda at 13th, and they're the one that's really I'm struggling to get my head around how they've finished 13th this year. When you see them play the way they did on the weekend, look at Collingwood, who are outside looking in, who have missed it now, and have had probably one of the best seasons from a player for a little while in Nick Dacos, who's fought against the odds to try and get this team in the final. So what's gone wrong? Is it too simplistic to say that it's injuries, or is that real? You know, they were all in the same sort of area, and they have been banged up. Without the go, you can make the excuses, but if you wrote them all down and said, okay, let's treat this like I'm running a milk bar, right? And you've got to work out why you're making money, why you're losing money, what are things that will come and go, and what are deep-seated issues that you need to address. Because in 3 weeks' time, you're going to be making stacks of list decisions, and you're going to say, where are we at? Are we a contender? So what decisions do Fremantle make if they miss? What decisions do Carlton make if they miss? Do they get aggressive and try and find that next player, or are they back to the draft? Are they doing a bit of both? This is AFL footy, and this is why I think Sam Mitchell has probably been ahead of the competition. He's known exactly where Hawthorn have been at, and has made. It's always done in hindsight, right? So we're critical of him at the time, but now looking back, to purge those players and put those youngsters in and challenge them to get better in a hurry has been a boom for him. So now the decision, okay, so you've stepped through that phase. Are you into this phase, or are you actually into the contention phase? Like all those sorts of assessments take you to what October looks like. And October is the most critical month for full club. Not just the coach, not just certainly not for the players, but not just the strategy. It's who have you been chasing? Who have you been able to land? Have you got us the right type? I mean, some clubs were lucky to miss out on some players they went after last year. Lucky to miss. Like, would Radicale really help Hawthorn now? Like they end up with Chol, and they end up with you can go through the ones that they got, but the ones that they miss are just as impactful. Yeah. So I think that knowing why you are where you are, and just think about your own team and why you're there, is a fascinating discussion.
And what can be resolved in a short period, but what's endemic? I mean, there's a few that there are endemic issues, I reckon. Okay, so some of those teams are going to feature in our categories as we work our way through. The big issue is clearly Carlton, caravan of courage, go across the country. The fascination was, could a team with a critical mass of understudies, reinforcements and seat fillers go and save their season?
Seat fillers.
Now, they were aided and abetted by a shameful West Coast, but they got it done. The one certainty, you knew Patrick Cripps would lead the way, but they all went with him. Tells you a lot about the character of a team. I'm a nod to Carlton today.
Yeah, and what it would have done hadn't this happened. What's the other side of the coin look like today for Carlton? Yeah, get on that plane, come back, and the airport's packed with media. your season's gone awry, you were here, now you're here. And it all still is there in the background because the same thing's on again this weekend. So nothing's really dissipated. It's still there. But you're right. So sometimes you just have to know whether those players is Patrick Cripps going to be the man when you absolutely have to have it? Is he going to be able to deliver? And he did it so emphatically and so early, it took the stress out of the game for Carlton.
He'd had 5 in the first 3 minutes in the manner that you go, okay, that's going to be fine.
Yeah, that's not changing.
No, as long as they go with him. And this is we wouldn't fixate on West Coast today, but you get beaten by what you know. Yeah. How about you shut down the King as a starting point?
Well, he refused to be shut down. And I guess this comes back to, we're at round 23, right? We've put a full stop on round 23 and we've talked a lot of footy this year. And how many times have we said, I just don't think he's as violent as what he's been. And when you see him yesterday, it didn't matter whether he had players tugging on his jumper, arms around, wrapped around, half Nelson, full Nelson, whatever they were doing to him, didn't impact him. He would get the ball and it'd be gone, or he'd get a free kick, or he won 21 contested possessions yesterday. And all of them had a level of authority about them. So it was a different sort of performance, and that to me that's where they need to be. And as soon as he does that, you see Hewitt come with him. You think, okay. And then Elijah Hollands plays one of the better games he's played for a little while. And then forward of centre it works because no one's trying to do too much or too little. If we just blast it in, Charlie and Harry will fix it up. Right? But we don't have them down there, so we've got to work the ball up a little bit. So if there's a shorter option, let's take it, maintain possession, and not just give the ball back to McGovern. All of a sudden, that kick goes to 55, 60 from goal, and you get a high-quality entry or a shorter entry. There was less blast yesterday from Carlton than what I'd seen. So sometimes in these sorts of games, you can learn a lot and take things forward. I think they look better, smaller, forward of the ball. That's a discussion for Vossi and his coaching crew to work out how that could potentially look. We know those two big boppers are coming back in because they're stars. But it does make you think, what can they take forward from their backline look? I thought Wiedering was superb. I mean, we've talked a lot about these guys because they're star factor players. But he was everything to all players down back. And that when you see that, you go, wow, I hope he understands and reflects on that game and say, I can do all of this. I can still beat Oscar Allen. When the ball's coming to Oscar, I got him. And then you're able to play and cover for those lesser guys around you and not be as reliant on Mitch McGovern or an Adam Sard or a Kemp down back. Actually have your star control the show. It's a big day for Carlton, but you know what? They get about 5 minutes rest. And they got to set and go again for Saints.
And they have to set and go with their plans now declared.
Yeah.
So the opposition gets to plan more for you. Is the Kemp move early on, you're going, he's got no forward craft. And then he worked his way into that, but an opposition gets a full week to plan against that now. So, yeah, that's the trick, is to do it again. But
who gets – so Cripps next week, right? This is the fact. This is the footy lover in us, right? Already looking forward to next week. To be honest, we're almost footied out. But – we can't wait to see what the attitude or the matchup's like against Cripps, because he's going to be that one-man wrecking ball again, isn't he? So is it a Jack Steele? And Jack Steele will be thinking, Jesus, it's going to be on here. I'm going to have to bring my absolute A game, And he may need help. It may also be another half forward trading up and trying to get it, 2v1 or an extra body on him just to deny a clear run. So there's so many tactical things that are going to go in it from Ross Lyon, but when he plays like that, you're just in awe of the player.
Yeah. So there's a meeting in a week's time to determine the All-Australian captain, which I imagine is between Cripps and Bontempelli. And Robbo makes the point today is that the recency bias of that game. Now, both of them do this. This is their stock in trade. Saddle the team to the shoulder. And we're not leaving this field without the 4 points. To do it in these circumstances so late, it's probably on Bont now in Ballarat next week to answer that against the Giants.
Well,
to see where we are.
Does Sunday settle it?
It could do. Like, if one makes the finals and one doesn't, that looks like a good differentiator. Where did you lead them to? So
And if one's the reason they make the
Yeah,
final.
yeah. So I think your bone crusher, our Waverley Star, with 200 to go here, and they're two of the finest that we've ever seen.
I get a sneaky feeling our Australian crew, Gerard, will go with co-captains.
Sam Darcy went 1-5 and 1 out of bounds last week. He goes 7-1 yesterday. The Bulldogs pummeled the hapless, but he was an awesome figure up front.
Brad Johnson got to him, I think. Said, we need to chat. We need to sort this out. Isn't it great to see a young player with less than 30 games experience kicking 7 goals? And it's not just the 7, because you can get goals in many different ways. Some are a lot easier than others. 6 marks inside 50, 3 contested marks, and he was just taking the ball in a position that no one could compete. And it does send a message to the competition. Hey, one more pre-season next year, this could just go bang. And it just could become a phenomenon. You know that he's made of the right stuff. You see the way he moves. You see the way he wants to influence games and impact games. And I think it's a great sign that he is mature enough to be able to handle last week's form. So as you said last week, couldn't hit the side of a barn. But at 208 centimetres, you just don't see this happen, do you?
So his character, we've seen it twice this year. It was the Collingwood game where he knows he's getting suspended from the early minutes and ends up kicking the match winner. And then last week, usually with forwards, that week haunts for a few. You don't immediately correct that. He immediately corrected it. If this was a straight-out head-to-head vote, take fairness out of it, and next Monday you had to choose between Sam Darcy and Harley Reid, which way would we be going?
For the rising star?
Yeah.
Can we make the All-Australian panel do that regardless?
Just for the exercise?
I
reckon they'll be relieved they don't have to.
Yeah, actually, that's a good call.
This is a really hard differentiation to make.
Look, the midfielders, the gap between an absolute top-line midfielder and a very good midfielder is not as big as what a gap between a dominant key forward. Like we're seeing what Jesse Hogan is doing, and we'll talk about him later. The gap between what he's doing and the rest goes on the scoreboard. So when these guys are the full bottle and are just your answer forward of the ball, it changes everything. Like if Sam Darcy can ride shotgun with Jamar and Aaron Norton, they could just destroy a final series. Everyone's got one good tall defender. Some have got 2. No one's got 3. No one's got 3.
We were going through that earlier. I think I would be leaning towards Darcy.
Yeah.
At the moment.
You've never liked West Coast, though.
The worst bit is clearly the Houston bump, which is, what if we had probably a handful of actions that are just so far outside the range of what happens in the game now. They stand out. They have met maximum punishment throughout the year, and now Dan Houston is at the mercy of that. Given what we saw from the Rankine incident not that long ago, is that 4 was offered there, so this feels like +4.
Yeah. And I think that's where we're at. I think everyone knows this now. That once you see that action and you understand that he's missing footy, and you can argue whether does 5 versus 6 versus 7 versus 4 actually make a difference to changing behaviour? I think it does. Something it doesn't, because it's a split-second decision that's made. He won't play again this year, Gerard. I think we can all agree on that. It's a horrible blow for Port Adelaide's opportunity to win the premiership this year. He's one of their Beatles. They only got 4 Beatles, the 3 in the middle and Houston. They're their best 4 players. So they'll have to do it without Ringo, which will be tough, because when you look at how teams have set up against Port Adelaide, we've shown lots of vision this year about how they've addressed Farrell and Houston off halfback. And remember Carlton facing the wrong way against the grain of the game to just deny them getting handball receives from the marking player, to slide past the stand rule. So he is a strategic influence on a game of footy, whether he's getting the ball or not. He's someone you need to address, whether it be with a tag or a team tag type approach. It's a huge magnet to take off the board. And it is one I feel for Ken, because I feel like right now this has probably been his best chance to win it. Yeah, and he's going to lose one of his top 4 players, which is a real shame.
How do you think that happens? So you've been out there, and there's a lot of conditioning around that not happening anymore, and it's a hospital ball, so it does create that moment of pause, which sets up for it to happen. Why do you reckon that can still transpire?
Yeah, we actually debated this off air yesterday. So in a bygone era, you when those moments arose, you took them.
Yep.
If I can inflict some damage and some pain on my opponent, regardless of who it is, you took it, right? And that's why we had so many problems back in the day, and it was an ugly look for the game. Even though there were times where we'd make videos about these sorts of hits, and laud these players, but that was the day, that was the game, right? I think now it's a rarity that a player takes this opportunity. We're seeing the adjustments across the game. Not many are spearing in low with their head anymore. Not many are charging into a contest without actually making some form of assessment before they go in, which is what we're asking them to do. And it's a difficult transition. I'm of the belief that Izak Rankine was a targeted player on the weekend. And when you shool players up like that, you can get a couple that it's not in their nature go over and above because they see, oh, that's Rankine, I've got to make contact. I think that's what's happened. Now, that I'm not putting any responsibility on Ken or Port Adelaide. That's just footy. This guy we want to affect as often as we can today because he is the reason that we won't finish top four. He could take this game off us. He's such an important player. And when it happened, Adelaide were a goal up, and he was a significant part of them being a goal up. So you understand all the reasons. I think that's what's happened. But he has to handle that now, and the club have to just get on with it. That this is their lot. Split-second decision built up on the back of we've got to stop that guy.
And the confluence of events is he's leaving at the end of this season. He's such a critical part of the next few weeks, and he's not going to play a role in any of it. So,
do you think they can win it without him?
Yes, but he's a big piece to miss. And when you are tuning up, like you have to wear injury, but you shouldn't be wearing something like this. No. This is a huge unforced error.
Yeah.
And it has big ramifications.
Tom Hawkins had to live with this a couple of times.
Yeah, he did it in a semi-final and missed the preliminary final against Richmond, which was a really close game, and he was missed. Yeah, but to do it this far out and you're going to miss the expanse of the final series, that's a bitter one for Port. The debate for New Vision Clinics, keyhole, laser vision, next generation technology. So Collingwood are going to miss the 8. So what are we to make of that? Is to be there on Saturday during the twilight and to feel that was the high point of their premiership defence. There's been nothing easy about this year for them, but that was the high point. And then, as it turns out, it's the final act of it. Sort of a bit hard in the reckoning.
I really enjoy listening to other commentators and their phrasing or their wording and how they see the game. And I think it's sort of like our own little review, if you like, and how they're seeing the game, what they're saying. I'm fascinated by Gary talking about the grind. He talked about, I think it was Essendon he referred to. They weren't prepared to get involved in the grind of footy. Happy to play when it's on their terms and all that sort. I think there's a little bit with Collingwood. When they're 3 goals down, they're unstoppable because it says we've just got to attack, we've got to go flat out, and they love that. They love playing that game. But when it drops back into the day-to-day of footy, the other 100 minutes of the game, it's just a bit much. They're just not really as invested as what they were. I know they've been injured. I know there are alibis, but I don't see the investment in the same game. So let's just talk about the 23 that are selected. They can go from a 4 out of 10 sort of energy level to 10 out of 10 in the same game. And you say, well, how does that happen? And it's the psychology of the game. This is why it's so hard to be up for 6 months for the 30-week season on the back of a pre-season that all you've done is talk about getting to that last month of madness. And then once you've had success, doing it again is hard to repeat. And it just looks tired for the 100 minutes that they are not really engaged in. So they can play some brilliant footy. They got this little fellow that just goes mad, which he did in the second quarter and has one of the best quarters we've seen for the year. But they just don't do it for the other 100 minutes. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do. So, and I think this is the lot of the premiership winner now. And I think there's a lot of different aspects to Collingwood's season. The first is that they had the shortest off-season the game has ever known. They played the longest, and then we brought the season forward and we jammed them in, and they missed the start. They weren't physically ready for the start of the season, and they are paying a price for that now, because any win through those early games would still have them in contention and potentially making it. And then I think the other aspect which has played out, so Graham Wright, we learnt today, is not coming back. When you win it, the reality changes. If they'd lost by half a kick to Brisbane, there's no way known all of those positions within the club would have changed. They would have locked in and gone, right, this is immense. Double down on everything that we do. But they won it. And you go, well, I want to be in this position and we're going to move that person to this position. So they shuffle all the chairs around to give everyone a reward and to make them happy and to give them different portfolios. And the footy manager is granted extended leave, which he clearly personally needs. Great. Doesn't happen if you've lost by half a kick in the grand final, because the edge is so raw.
Yeah.
So there's no criticism in that.
Yeah.
That's just the reality. Is they tasted the air at the top of the mountain.
Yeah.
It's different after that.
It's a good point. Dennis Pagan always said the hardest players to coach are the ones that have had success. They've got all the answers. You can't tell them anything. They already know. So and they're not, those messages don't sit with you at the time, but years later they do. And I think there's a component in footy at the moment that it's so well tracked that you have an advantage on the competition with a mode or a method for one season only. It's a one-time offer. And you've got to win the flag when you have it, and credit to them, they've done that. And now everyone's stealing little bits of what they've done, or they're aware of what they're doing. So you get picked apart. It's hard to repeat. Not many win with the same game plan the second time. So you've got to evolve, and that's, I guess, Collingwood's lot now. Is this the talent group that they need to evolve with? Is it the system? Is it the health of the player? Or is it time for a refresh? The off-season at Collingwood will be fascinating.
Yeah. So they're going to stay with what they've got.
Why are we where we are?
And then the most interesting part of watching that back yesterday was, so the only reason they were there was because of Nick Dacos, yes, but he didn't do it in the end. The whodunit ran through Lockie Schultz, John Noble, Izak Quainer, Darcy Cameron and Beau McCreary. So there was a moment in the game where you're going, okay, is anyone going to go with Nick Dacos, Scott Pendlebury, Steele Sidebottom here? And then the answer in the end was yes. So, yeah, I reckon what comes next is really hard to answer with them. But are those components going to return them next year with the hunger and the ferocity to pick up the chase? Or...
just to touch on your previous point there, right? So I reckon it's, hey, we need to score 3 goals. Now, what are we doing? And those players get excited because they've got a role in that. The game's normally set up for 4 or 5 guys to influence. But when you need 3 goals in 5 minutes, everyone's aggressive and everyone can be a match winner. So a pawn has a major, hey, don't worry about your man. You've got to create a goal for us. That's not something they have the luxury of for the other 100 minutes. So I'd love this discussion, and we could do this discussion on Collingwood for an hour. But what they tell us in the off-season will be of absolute fascination. We will do, how many hours you reckon we'll spend on what they do at the trade and draft periods of the post-season?
Are they going to be significant players there? Oof. The Brisbane Lions are the other side of that equation. So they buy themselves a place on the pressure index. They'd won 9 in a row. They had the game against the Giants under control. They had the game against Collingwood under control. They lose both of them. There's 2 flaws in their DNA, I reckon, and that you can become obsessed about. They do miss critical goals at critical times. That's just part of who they are, their inaccuracy. And they have this eternal struggle with teamsmanship. And we've seen them try to correct it, and it doesn't always suit them. They bungle chances when they're trying, and then you don't do it. And they twice didn't kick the ball to Charlie Cameron in the third quarter. Joe Danaher and Lohman, they both end up missing their shots. It was totally the wrong thing to do, and they leave 2 goals on the table, and they end up going under right at the end. So they're going to, in all likelihood, miss the top 4. They've certainly forfeited any chance of home field advantage all the way through.
Yeah, I see it differently, and this is really critical, right? And we're talking about people's jobs, so we're going to give them a bit of respect. And I said this weeks ago, and you wear your wax, people come at you. if Chris Scott was coaching the talent levels of the Brisbane Lions, they wouldn't be fifth. I'm signing off on that. I'm guaranteeing that. Now, that's not, as I said at the time, I'm not being disrespectful to Chris Fagan whilst I'm talking about his job, right? I'm trying to say that strategically, in moments that matter and setting the game up to maximise what you've got and deny the opposition, Scott does a better job. So those moments that matter, there's no way under a Chris Scott plan that Harris Andrews would be able to be taken out of the game as regularly as what Collingwood are able to do. In the grand final, they put Frampton on him, right? So these are the last 5 meetings between Harris Andrews and Collingwood. He's been able to intercept the ball 5, 6, 8, 7, and 4 times. That is not him, right? Against every other team, those numbers will be 2 or 3 times that number. So they've been able to do it with Frampton, Reef McGuinness, and Will Hoskin-Elliott. They haven't even used a premium piece. And Craig McRae says, there's one component I don't have to worry about. And everyone says, but we got to 5. You got there, right? You got there, but you didn't get it with your trump cards. I'm big on this. And then the game needs to be won, and you see the strategic sort of side of how Collingwood orchestrate the game in motion, the game at speed, the opportunity to score. And Brisbane are not quite set. They're not quite as they should be. It's not quite the right players. It's Dara Joyce loose when he shouldn't be loose. It's instead of Harris Andrews or Zorko or Starcevic. So there's components of it for me that come back to the coach's box. Now, that's not just game day. That's in the instruction and the education over a 4, 6, 8 week block or a pre-season. How should it look when we're 5 points up? How should it look when we're 5 points down? They don't just drop into that mode for me. So until they get that right, they'll run aground in a small margin game at the point end of the year. Now, they've got elite talent. They can win any game. They could go 10 goal, 10 goal, 10 goal in the final series, right? And we'd say, well done. But if it comes down to a close, structural, head-to-head matchup, 3 minutes to go in a final, I'm backing the other team because I've just seen this fail too often. And that's harsh, but that's a reality. And you can say that it's accuracy. The most inaccurate team in the competition at the moment is the Dogs. But they seem to get through it. They don't talk about it as much as what we do and what excuse makers do. So they don't kick the ball to Charlie Cameron twice and have the stroll in goal. So whose fault's that? Who is that? Is that meant to be a system issue? Is it something you stamp out during the week? We had this discussion about them at the start of the year being selfish.
And I think they have strived for it.
But they don't fundamentally. They haven't changed fundamentally, Jared.
So when the opportunities arose, they didn't do it. So they weren't. It's not natural and instinctive to them. I do think that the other element of what happened at the end was McInerney gave away 2 clumsy free kicks, which cost them field position out of the middle, and Danaher did as well. So there's a level of not quite being buttoned down in those moments. Yeah. And we'll disagree on this, but I think those players own that. Yeah. I think Oscar's last 5 minutes, if he ends up being the All-Australian ruckman, you're going to have to excuse a bit when the game was on the line against another good bloke. This is the 5 minutes that you had, and that wasn't okay. And Danaher plays in this sort of flighty way, which sometimes is funny. And
He's probably their best player.
Don't give that free kick away. Just don't. So the kicking the goal is one thing, but don't give that free kick away.
So there are 100 reasons, right? And you can pick your poison. You can go wherever you want to go. But how many times have we seen this, Jared? In different forms, lose big games or runs of goals against in close games.
Yeah. And then Lockie Neal's with them at the end. And I reckon you know what's being said there. Yeah. So I think there's a clear path back to the grand final for Brisbane. I'm not giving up on that.
Are they good enough to win
Home elimination final.
Yep.
Say they play Geelong in a semi. I just think they're better than Geelong. And then they go to Adelaide and potentially play Port Adelaide, where they won by 15 goals not that long ago. So there's a path there. But there is these flaws in their makeup are there at these moments, and it was there again on Saturday.
Spot on, and we agree 100% on that. They're better than Geelong, and then I look at the ladder today, and Geelong are 4th.
Yep.
And I say, well, this is half the point. This is the discussion. How the hell are they 4th and Brisbane are 5th looking in? You're not going to win 4 finals in a row. I know it sounds good on the path. Winning 4 has been almost impossible for any team for 30 years. So in a season that's as tight, getting on the road is such a disadvantage. They had it there, Jerry. It was there. 3-4 weeks ago, it was there. It's not there anymore, so they're going to have to do it the hard way. And if they do, we're going to clap our hands and say, May, well done. But right now, they've got so many little flaws that need addressing. But that's been the case in big games before.
David King.
Yes.
The curiosity is St Kilda.
Oh, I thought I was a curiosity for it.
We thought coming into the year,
Oh.
the Red Dog was back.
Oh, don't.
And we got our evidence early in that game against Collingwood. You go, right, that's St Kilda. That's why we think they're on the rise. And we've had to live with them being 14th throughout the year. You know, look like a bunch of mugs there. And then the Red Dog, after halftime on Saturday night, you go, is that St Kilda? Could that be St Kilda? And if that was St Kilda, where would it put them in the scheme of things?
Jeez, it was good, wasn't it? They've probably been my big disappointment for the year, the Saints. Like, I just thought they had better talent this year than last with the same sort of setups, same coaching setups, a little bit more luck through the preseason. They were healthier coming into this year than they were last. Remember last year they played without all their tall forwards for a while. Caminiti was the main man because King wasn't there, and we just thought they'd have a better year this year. Bit more growth, and it just hasn't been the case. And I can't really work out why, except for everyone says, oh, they just lack a midfielder, another boom midfielder. But I think since they've put Sinclair just back as a permanent halfback alongside Sywang and Miller, they've looked a better product on counterpunch. So on the weekend, and this is my frustration with them, I don't know whether the methodical build-up play has consumed them. And yes, it works, and you get the ball inside 50, but you can't score. So you can move it, and it's never been easier to move the ball. Ross has told us that. Never been easier. But has it been easier to score? No. So you can get it there, but if you get it there slowly, you can't score. So on the weekend, in the first half, they go through the corridor 40 times. 40 disposals in the corridor, I should say. Not 40 times. 40 disposals. Second half, 94. So that's when they play express, they look brilliant. And again, those playmakers getting involved. So if you're talking about score out of the defensive half, they scored 67 points on the weekend out of the defensive half. They've only had 3 better performances than that since 2015. In 10 years of football, 3 better games than that. They've had some pretty serious footy teams in that period. And if you're just specific to the second half, it's 51 points in the second half. So is that them? And if that is them, then why haven't we bloody seen it? And I don't know what they're going to do with the off-season, because once you see this, you start thinking, okay, well, are we going to be a more aggressive team next year? Are we going to be a Hawthorn telling us that's how we have to be? Or are we still going to stick with the model that is protect first, be hard to play against, be difficult to score against, and play in 10 goals versus 8 goal games? Now, that's a philosophical discussion. Are you Sam Mitchell or are you old Ross? Are you 10 out of 10 or are you 0 out of 10? Where are you on the sliding scale? So we don't have the answers and we don't move the magnets. So we just wait and see. But I love that version of St Kilda. And if I'm a Saints fan, I'm going to watch that every week. And I don't care if it wins, if it's considered the winning finals method, because while they're sort of growing this list, that's a great way to play. Where do you sit?
And it's so well suited to their home ground.
Yeah.
Like that's the winning football of Marvel. And that the majority of their games are there. So that's the team I thought they were going to be this year.
Yeah, same. We agree.
And I saw it in the Collingwood game at the start and went, right, got them right. Nah. And then it was back there on Saturday night. And then I think, messages come through about what does it mean for Max King. I think that's so interesting. They have thoughts to confront. What is the best version of them? They clearly need currency in the door for high-end talent in the midfield, and I suspect the battle scenario is going to give them that. Not ideal to lose him by any stretch, but it gives you the dual picks where you should be able to hit midfielders. People are asking is, could you package Max King up with picks and get Petrarca, for instance? Is that sort of thinking at the moment? What do they want to be?
Well, I wouldn't be purging Max King necessarily. I mean, you could do that. There are options, right? That's one of them. If you thought you were going to be a better product, small ball, forward of centre, you could do that. But if you get those decisions wrong, the fallout's pretty severe. I just wonder whether you can be a little bit smaller forward of the ball with Max down there, and maybe Membry or someone like that replaces the loss of Battle. With Battle, you get a pick. What's it going to be? Pick 6 or something. So you end up with 2 high-end picks. There's your 2-star midfielders. Nail those picks, which has been the problem at the Saints for years. Just getting those picks absolutely right. You get those 2 picks right, you get a chance in 3 or 4 years. Get them wrong and you stay where you are. But if we're just talking about game plan, I think that's the version that the Saints need to embrace.
Geelong got it wrong at the worst moment. They looked like they had a game under control at half-time. Your spin-off to that, and you've been preaching this, God damn you for doing it, is how to confront Jeremy Cameron.
Cheers.
And the teams had been getting it wrong, and then a team got it right.
Yeah, well, Battle, he's a good matchup for him, isn't he? It's a perfect, like for like. He can go. He went everywhere with him and just trailed him, 5-10 metres in front. He still kicked a couple of goals late, and walks out of it with a reasonable looking evening. But he was a non-factor, really, Jeremy Cameron, and they operate off those top 2 or 3 more than most. Geelong, if you can disarm them, then you leave it to guys that are not really capable of swinging games. That are sliding. So it was a great coaching and a perfect matchup, and I think it's a view to going forward through a final series. Don't get beaten by this mismatch. We saw Fremantle try it and get it wrong. We've seen Adelaide try it and get it wrong. We've seen North Melbourne try it and get it wrong. Probably the most 2 effective people that have got this job done have been Rory Lobb and Josh Battle. So what do you learn from those 2? I think that the vision and the reviews of those performances will be heavily tracked. There's no perfect way to play against a given player, but Josh Battle has shown another avenue.
All you can do in a week like this, David King, is go out on the field and show that clarity and unity of purpose, and that was the way in which they played.
Yeah, and that's usually just go and win the game of footy. But I think there are ways to win a game of footy, and there are statements made in that game. And I admire the leaders of the Melbourne Footy Club. I do. I constantly talk about Max Gawn and their next 3 or 4. Being able to front up. And they've all had their challenges this year. But to see what Max Gawn and Jack Viney did as a 2-man war against that midfield of the Suns, they just destroyed them. They ripped their soul out, Jared. Gawn was everything for them in the ruck, and it was a really good battle with Witts, because Witts is a serious ruckman, right? In the competition, he's a big boy. He kicked a couple of goals. He tackled Max for one, and he grabbed one out of the ruck. So he played a reasonable game. But outside of those 2 moments, if you look at scores from clearances, which is where we always go. So this is just Viney and Gawn. Rivers did a little bit, but this is Viney and Gawn against Matty Rowell, who's been the hardest head in football for 18 months. Anderson, Miller, these guys, they scored 75 points from stoppage, and there's only been 2 better games than that for Melbourne in their last 4 years. And they've been in the premiership mode in those 4 years. They've been a serious footy team that's had Oliver and Petrarca in there as well. So without those guys, these 2 were able to go and do it against a pretty good clearance team. So let's not talk the Suns down. They were poor. Matter of fact, they were awful in their want to work. And Viney was creative and proactive post clearances more often than not, and challenged Rowell to defend him, which he failed on. Challenged Miller to defend him, which we all say he's been the best 2-way runner in the game. Well, you know what? He's got some work to do. The review for Tuke Miller will be pretty poor today. There was a moment which Dermot Brereton highlighted in the call, which was terrific, where Noah Anderson had a chance to just lay a block for one of his teammates to continue to carry the ball further down the ground and give a high-quality inside 50 entry. And rather than take the physical punishment of the block, he allowed that player to step around him. That player ran down and impacted the kick going inside 50. Now, it's a small moment, but it's a window into the psychology of the Suns that I'm not really prepared to take the physical trauma to allow you some time. I'm okay if it happens, but I'm not really going out of my way to do it. And that to me was a moment that summed up their year. When things are going okay, we're all in. We're all with you. We're all rolling. We're downhill skiing. We play at home. We're happy to do all this up here. But when really I need to absolutely do it for you, I'm going to weigh it up. Sometimes I might not. And that's one of your leaders. That's Noah Anderson. I think Damien Harvey could be livid with that. And I guarantee if they showed 3 edits for the whole review, that'd be one of them. So they got a lot of work to do, and they're another one like St Kilda who've promised so much, and have so much to work with the Suns, and haven't delivered. And I think that the weekend was whilst being so good for Melbourne, was so bad for the Suns.
Did Gawn lock in all Australian honours? Fog thinks he has over the past 2 weeks playing on one leg.
Yeah, it's a good call. We've talked a lot about Tristan Sherry, who's been very good. Big O didn't have his best weekend, but Max is Max. He's just such an impactful tall. He just does it all. And I love hearing him speak. Melbourne fans are frustrated at the moment, and I can understand that with Petrarca and what's happened with Oliver and what's happened to their footy club that's brought them so much joy in the last few years. They're frustrated that this season's been the way it has. But I think they're thrilled that Max is still there, having him re-sign and lead the way he does. All credit to you.
PFI, the Giants. So when we were together on Wednesday night, you told me that Jesse Hogan's Wayne Carey. There you go.
You laughed at me.
I think Jesse. I think Jesse. No,
stop laughing at me on a Wednesday, please.
You were. I've had a feeling you were telling me, and this is why it won't work. But you go, I think Jesse Hogan's Wayne Carey. Could he? What he's doing right now. Could he carry it through a final series and win it as the commanding forward presence that's so rare in a final series?
So when we spoke on Wednesday, we said we haven't seen a team channel everything into one guy. So the coach's box sets everything up for him. They instruct the rest of the forwards to clear out, to block for him, to let him get the mismatch that he's chasing, to let him manoeuvre around so that he can orchestrate the matchup, which is frightening how he gets away with this. And then when we go forward of centre and we drive it in, it's exclusively going to him. There is no other target in there. So you look at it and you think, okay, gee, that's a risk, isn't it? Like, what happens if he loses form? But he doesn't lose form. His contested marking has become such a feature, and his aerial work, if he doesn't mark it, it's a soft drop. So those smalls up there are going to town on the soft drop. It's the most dangerous ball in the game, the soft drop, because those smalls are ready to crumb and defenders are always chasing tail, and they've got to get everything right to deny that opportunity. He is a colossus at the moment. 6 goals, 4. He only took 3 marks inside 50. He only took 3. He took one of them, I reckon, 30 seconds into the game. So it's not one way that he's getting you. I thought Fremantle's planning was awful for this game. Awful. They've allowed the biggest weapon out there. If we can skim the game across 18 teams and present that on Wednesday night, what the hell are they doing? What are they tracking? They got fleeced by a guy that is a known product that's been able to do this mismatch thing for a few weeks. And even if you're not getting caught up in the mismatch and it's just you've just got one player you want to lock on him, just see it through. It was gone. The first centre bounce, Hogan walked out of the goal square and got a mismatch 10 seconds into the game. I scratched my head. I'm thinking, well, that's bizarre. Because I didn't see the game live. I had to go and watch it on review. I just couldn't believe it. But to stick with the Giants for a minute, they're the number 1 pressuring team in the competition, right? That's an asset I think that can take them a long way. So they put you into trouble and under pressure immediately. They put you into a turnover game. And I don't think their ball movement is as fluent as what it's been over the journey. I don't necessarily think their back sixes are as good as what they've been over the journey. They've been in better form, but their pressure is keeping them in games and winning them games of football. They haven't lost their head-to-head pressure battle for 7 weeks. So if you play the Giants, expect heat. Expect that real confrontation. That's finals footy. This is why their game travels. They're the best travelling team in the comp, in finals as well, over the last couple of years. This is why, because they're difficult to play against. But to be specific on everyone's going to talk about the game of Brent Daniels. Jeremy, call him Wayne Hogan. Let's just call him Wayne Hogan from here on in. Wayne Hogan could be the man of the final series, and we haven't had a big man do this for a while.
Yeah. They've got PFI every which way I look at it. All right, we'll bring it home
Would
with
you
the
go
seedings.
with Wayne Hogan or Jesse Carey?
Probably Jesse Carey.
Okay, let's go
Wayne
with Jesse
Hogan
Carey.
doesn't quite sound right.
It doesn't sound right, does it?
What
Interesting.
to do with the seedings? What do you want to do it for?
Wow. I've scribbled and crossed out 3 teams here. I'm putting Brisbane at 4. On blind faith that the talent will get rolling, and that then the last couple of weeks will sting. What are you thinking? You haven't done them for 3 weeks properly. Come on.
I haven't. I've got Sydney at 4.
At 4?
Yeah. Just they're in hold mode, so I don't take a whole lot at face value at the moment. They've been waiting for the finals forever, and they're still waiting. What will their approach be to this week?
I want to see Thursday night selections. I don't want to see Warner in the team, Heaney in the team. Papley won't be there. I'd be resting Grundy. I wouldn't take any risks. No contact injuries this week from Sydney.
3?
I'm going with the Dogs, but it's a bit like the Hotham handicap this week. I could put money on the Dogs at 12s, and they could lose this week, and you lose your money before the finals even
They didn't
start.
even get there.
They didn't even qualify.
Yeah.
They didn't qualify for the Melbourne Cup. But they are the number 1 profile in the comp right now.
Yeah. I got the Giants at 3.
Giants.
Love what they're doing. Building ominously.
I've got
2?
the Giants at 2.
Yep.
I think they're playing great footy. They know their product. They're in such good form. They're in unison at the moment. I love what they're doing forward of the ball, and their midfield's getting better.
I've got the Bulldogs at 2, so same risk. But I think their footy over a couple of months now is hard to go past. And 1?
I'm sticking with the Swans. Given what we've seen from the midfield spiking, Heaney spiking the last couple of weeks, 6 votes, Jared. The Asterix might be back in front.
I know.
He
will have receded from view and then just gone whoosh, straight back up.
You're going to have to put up with Corey McKern's tweets all night, Brownlow night. Have you got it?
I've still got Hawthorn at 1.
The Hawks.
They're playing the best footy. Date back to May. So, and I so enjoyed the first 25 minutes of what they just don't disappoint.
No.
So you come in and watch the Alien Invasion movie and just go, what a great opening 25 minutes.
I've let myself down with no Hawks.
Highly provisional.